Hello and welcome to episode 22 of the World Wanderers podcast, or as I'd like to call it, the Machu Picchu sode.
I'm Amanda, and that's my co-host Ryan. He's a little strange. Don't worry about him.
Yes, don't worry about me. Today we're talking about Cusco and Machu Picchu.
Yeah, for sure. So what were your first impressions of Cusco?
I remember you had been before we went, and so we cruised in from Puno, world famous.
Famous for ribs.
On a glorious, what was the name of the bus company?
Cruz del Sur.
Glorious Cruz del Sur bus. And Peru wins the South American luxury bus contest. The buses there are awesome. You get your own TV, big leather seats, fully reclinable. Awesome buses. So we cruised in. We had been quite a long bus ride, I think. No, not that long, but uncomfortable.
Yeah, it'd been like 6 or 7 hours.
The kind of weird distance where it's not super long haul, but not a short time period. And it was a little bit hot in the bus, I think. So cruising to Cusco, and you'd been telling me about how nice it was. And the area that the bus station is not super nice.
It's not nice at all, that area.
No, a little bit ghetto. But we get off the bus, get in a taxi, and get to the area around our accommodation, which is San Blas, just up from the Plaza de Armas. And immediately good feelings about Cusco. So in Cusco, we decided to book an apartment with Airbnb, which is something we'd been wanting to do but hadn't done yet.
Yeah, and for those of you who haven't heard of Airbnb, it's a website where you can go on and you rent a room or a house from somebody.
Yeah,
so as opposed to staying in a hostel, you get to stay in a furnished home and you kind of have your own space, which is nice.
Yeah, and it's just taking this concept of eliminating middlemen, making things more peer-to-peer. So you see that with Uber, eliminating the middleman of the taxi company, connecting drivers with customers. And Airbnb is peer-to-peer, connecting people with rooms to people who want rooms, eliminating the middleman of hostels, property managers, and stuff like that. So we'd met quite a few people who had done it, but every time we weren't always looking at it, and hadn't found deals that really made sense when we had looked at it. A lot of stuff that was slightly more expensive than a hostel for 2 people. I think if you've got 3-4 people, it's an awesome bet every time. With 2 people, you kind of have to want to pay a bit more.
Yeah, for sure. And we also were spending, 3 or 4 nights in a place. And I don't know why it was, but for some reason I couldn't exactly justify, an Airbnb as opposed to a hostel. Like I felt like if we were going to do that, be in an apartment or in somebody's home, like we should really have the time to feel like we're at home as opposed to just getting in, spending 2 nights there and leaving. So Cusco was the perfect place for us because we were spending a week there. We're like, this is great. We can spend a week just, have our own space, have our own little kitchenette, make some meals. And it worked out pretty well. We stayed up in the San Blas area, and then we were actually doing language school.
Yeah, and just before we move on to language school, I was just going to say that we were staying in hostels looking for that more low budget thing. But if you are people who are trying to be more hotels, and when you do stay in hostels, it's private rooms for sure. We're kind of like splurge on the private rooms, stay in dorm rooms otherwise. But then Airbnb makes a lot of sense for you, because for us, we could have stayed in a dorm for cheaper, and we probably could have stayed in a private room for a hostel for slightly cheaper. But it was just nice because we had our own kitchen, bathroom, and our space to unpack and live. Spanish school, we had talked about in a previous episode, our Buenos Aires episode, how much we enjoyed it and found it really valuable. So we thought another week of Spanish school somewhere else would be a cool experience. And we picked Cusco because you had been before and had a really positive experience.
Yeah, so I actually went to Peru in the summer of 2012. I went down and met a girlfriend who was traveling Peru and Bolivia for 2 months. She was like, do you want to come down? I'm going to be by myself. And I was like, if I can do Machu Picchu, like I'm in. I have vacation time at work. And so Cusco was my first taste of South America. And so I think it's safe to say it was the first it was kind of where I fell in love with South America. Like after two weeks there, I came home and I was like, we have to go to South America.
And was it just that you were maybe had a rougher, grittier image of South America in your mind, and then Cusco kind of showed that it's like, you know, not sketchy really at all?
Yeah, I think maybe that was partly it. South America was never really top of my list to travel. Like I know when my friend was saying she wanted to go to South America, it was the one place that she really wanted to go. When she had the chance to travel, I was kind of like, oh, really? Like, you know, Europe's pretty cool. Southeast Asia is amazing. Australia, New Zealand, all these other places that I'd chosen to go to before South America. I kind of was like, ooh, I would push for those over South America. She'd minored in Spanish though, so going to a Spanish speaking country was something she was very passionate about. And I'm so happy that I chose to go down there because South America has a really special place in my heart. I love the entire continent.
Yeah. And I think Peru right now has really blown up the last few years. Tons and tons of people going down there, especially Machu Picchu is like a really big thing. I feel like I see on my Facebook feed every like a month a new person with that photo from Machu Picchu.
Yeah, for sure. I think that Machu Picchu is what people think of when they think of South America. It's kind of that big thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, you know, you say, oh, I traveled in South America. Oh, you did Machu Picchu then. And
yeah,
it kind of is that big thing in South America, for sure.
And anyone who is pretty unfamiliar with the location of Machu Picchu, Cusco is really the launching pad for any trip to Machu Picchu. Machu Picchu is located right above a town called Aguas Calientes, but Cusco is like the big, nicer city. So if you're, there are a lot more families there, a lot more American families, American university kids.
A lot of Americans.
Yeah, just a lot of Americans, which you didn't really see other spots in South America. And also like cruises, more retired people, because I think it does have this reputation now that a ton of people have been there that, you know, it's not anything sketchy, even though like from being there and feeling it, like Peru in a lot of ways felt sketchier than Colombia, but like people would never go to Colombia who go to Peru.
Well, I think there is sort of this element of, you know, locals see people with money, they see how much money they spend, and then they know that they have money. So that makes, you know, if you're poor, you're like, okay, well, that person has money, like I'm fine robbing them. It gets sort of that. I think Southeast Asia has a little bit of that, like where the really touristy locations are.
Since it's become more touristy, it's gotten more.
Yeah. Like, you know, if you work for a tourist company and you know how much these people are spending on these tours and you're like, that's how much I make in 3 months. It's like, well, they obviously have money to spend. So I think that increases robberies, muggings, that sort of crime.
Sure. And since it's been popular with Machu Picchu being this big destination, the infrastructure is really built up in Cusco to handle the higher class tourism. There's some really nice restaurants, which is common for all of Peru, actually. Lima's got some of the best food in the world. But Cusco also really good restaurants. You go on TripAdvisor and the first like 200 restaurants have like a 4.5 or out of 5 rating. Tons and tons of good restaurants.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because we rented an Airbnb with a kitchenette and we're like, it's going to be great. We can save so much money on food. We're going to cook all the time. And then, you know, we get to Cusco and obviously I'd eaten at some of the good restaurants, but there were so many more on top of that. Just to name a few that we went to that I would highly recommend, Jack's Cafe, right off the Plaza de Armas, killer breakfast, great soup, good sandwiches.
Sandwiches, smoothies, bacon. Bacon.
That's pretty much what Ryan liked.
Delicious, gigantic breakfast. I highly recommend that restaurant.
There's a coffee shop called The Meeting Place, which is up in the San Blas area. Really cool concept. It's kind of run by, it is run by volunteers, a lot of American, Canadian, Australian people. And then the guy there who owns the place and runs it, actually, he provides accommodation above the cafe, and then he takes the proceeds from the cafe and gives it to a project of his choice in the area. He's quite well known in the area, so that's a cool concept. Greens Organic, My friend and I went there like 3 times the first time I went to Cusco, and it's like, Ryan, we have to go back. It's probably the one place in South America where I'd say you can eat salad and you're not going to crap your pants after.
And the highest rated one on TripAdvisor, and I find it hard to disagree with it, Cafe Morena was another favorite restaurant of mine. And
good
it's
coffee,
not like,
good smoothies, great like quinoa salad.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, so good.
And it's not like we haven't really done this before where we've kind of listed off the restaurants we went to. But Cusco, man, it just got a ton of really good stuff.
It is interesting though, because if you're going to go to places like that, like you're paying for what you get. Like it is more alongside the prices is what you would find in Canada or the US. In saying that, you know, I was volunteering through the language school that we did language school at, and 2 of the guys that I was volunteering with, they were at the beginning of their trip and not wanting to spend money. So they ate off Plaza de Armas, kind of in more of the locals areas. And they ate Menu del Diaz for about 5 soles a meal, which is probably $2.50. Yeah, $2, $2.50 Canadian.
Yeah. So what we found the price wise, it's like you're paying the prices that are kind of like lower end food here. For $10 a meal here, you could get what you would get for like close to 30.
Yeah.
So it's like you're paying a third of the price, but you are paying because you're getting really good, high quality food. And a lot of people don't like to, because it's all tourists in those restaurants. And a lot of people kind of have negative feelings towards that, but I'm pretty down. I'm like, this is delicious food. I'm getting it for a really good price. And we'd been through Bolivia for a while, so it was nice to get somewhere where you felt like the food standards were high.
Yeah, for sure.
Food was delicious.
I kept justifying the money we were spending. I was like, you know, both of us got quite sick in Bolivia. We basically had full on evacuation mode from the body. Something in the stomach sent an evacuation, and it was coming out of all different areas. We were not feeling so hot for a few days. So getting to Peru, I was kind of like, you know, this is the last country. This food is delicious. I really don't feel like spending only $2 on a meal and chancing having diarrhea all day. I just don't want to do it. So spent a bit more money and got some good food.
Yeah. And then we started to get into it, but didn't really continue about our language school experience in Cusco. I don't know why I lost that word for a second, but in Buenos Aires, we did a classroom language school. So it was us and like 4 other people. In Cusco, we just did it private lessons with a tutor. It was a bit more expensive, I think. It's only slightly, because I think prices in Buenos Aires are more expensive than Cusco. But do you think there was more value in that form of learning?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, when we talk about the way that we learn Spanish, you described it pretty well. It's kind of like you've built a house, but you haven't built it from the foundation up. You've kind of just chopped away at different parts of it, and it's a little bit rickety. And, you know, being in Buenos Aires was great, but we redid a lot of stuff that we already knew because there was stuff that we didn't know that we needed to know to be at a higher level, if that makes sense. So it was good to be in Cusco because we could be like, this is what we want to learn. You know, you and I were at the same level of Spanish, essentially. So it was good where we could be like, you know, we want to learn this tense. We want to focus on this. This is what we want to practice. And she really catered that for us.
Yeah, I think the best way to learn a language is to throw yourself into the situations and then rely on your own natural ability to adapt. So the work you have to do is really overcoming anxiety and fear about putting yourself in these situations. And then once you get in those situations, just kind of letting your natural ability to learn and adapt happen. When you go into a setting in a classroom, it's very much, okay, we're going to do level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4, like this. And they kind of overload you with breadth. Breadth, is that the word I'm looking for? Like this wide stuff. You don't need to know 6 tenses at first. You don't need to know 50 verbs at first. You just need to know the specific structure. So that's the way we had been learning, because we had just doing private tutors. So we'd learned, you know, a couple pieces of level A, a couple pieces of level 3, a couple pieces of over here and here and here. So like you were saying, when we went into language school in Buenos Aires in a classroom context where it has to be someone dictating towards you because there's multiple people there, it filled in some gaps for us in terms of the foundation.
For sure.
But there was a lot of review. So when you have your own teacher, you can kind of skip around and ignore those predetermined textbook levels. Like you have to learn all the tenses before you can move on to this other thing. You know, you can get rid of those structures. Like you can be learning, before you learn all the present tenses, you can be learning a bit of future tense or stuff like that. And you don't have to learn all the tenses before you can get real detailed with like a large group of nouns and verbs and stuff. Yeah,
for sure. So we actually had a really beneficial week learning there. And then I was volunteering at a after school program. So I did that in the afternoons, which was nice. We kind of had, you know, language school from 10 till 12 in the morning. We went for lunch together at one of the delicious restaurants that we just listed. And then I went and did some volunteering in the afternoon.
And volunteering is a great practical application of putting yourself into a situation, and then you kind of just have to adapt to speak Spanish better.
Yeah, I mean, I was working with all these children who are ages of, well, I mean, we had one kid in diapers, although it's supposed to be from like 4 till 8, but realistically we had like 2 to 12 years old, and they don't speak English. You know, maybe they know a few of the body parts, but they don't speak English. So they're asking all these questions in Spanish. And at times it was very like, I don't know what you're saying, and this is difficult, but it was a great learning experience for me. Alongside that, it was good for me because Ryan really didn't want to do it, and I went and did it on my own, which is something that on our past trip I would not have done, because I was scared of being alone and scared of doing those things on my own.
Yeah, and on the last episode we kind of opened up about having a time where we were both kind of low self-esteem people and got upset with each other over something kind of ridiculous.
Yeah.
But so like you're saying about in you going off and doing something on your own, that's something we hadn't done a lot in previous trips. And I think that kind of built some resentment on my end, because I felt like I had to do stuff that maybe I didn't want to do, and kind of have this trade-off. So I think it's really important when you are traveling with someone that you are okay each doing your own thing. Like maybe it's like, I don't really want to do this, but I want to spend the day with you, so I will. But not like, I don't really want to do this, but I'm going to do this because then you're going to do something I want to do, but you don't want to do. Like, that's not a good, healthy place to be in. It's like, you guys should be okay doing your own thing.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, you know, I haven't traveled alone, so it is kind of it was sort of, the idea was scary to me, like taking a public bus and having to ask where to get off and then going to this place. And, you know, I ended up meeting people from the language school that I took the bus to and from with every day. But after you do it one time, like it's not that scary. And quite frankly, I believe that it's good to put yourself in that situation where you are out of your comfort zone and doing something that intimidates you or scares you, because it just strengthens you as a person. For me, it was very much like, from that experience, I was like, oh, you know, like I can do this.
Yeah. And there's
I don't need Ryan by my side every second of the day to function as a human being.
Yeah. And there's this great, I think it's Henry Ford quote about like, whether you can or can't, you are correct. In terms of, or what he's saying is, if you believe you can do something, you can. If you believe you can't, you can't. And people have all these fears and anxieties about things they really shouldn't be afraid of, that are limiting their expectations and beliefs about what they can actually do. So when you do, you know, you're afraid to go out and take a bus in a city, you kind of have this fundamental distrust in your ability to get through situations. Whereas I think the healthy place to be in is to have a fundamental trust in the ability to meet any conflicts, any issues that may arise. And it's like, you know what, I can meet anything I'm going to face today. And by going out and testing that on something simple that does scare you, you reinforce that trust in yourself. You lose those fears that maybe prevent you from trying things. You think, oh, this is a little pang of fear, so I'm not even going to think about trying this thing. And you do kind of enhance your ability to believe in yourself and think you can do more things.
Yeah, and I think for me too, it's a distrust in my ability to speak Spanish. I mean, it's like, what do I do if I get off the wrong stop? It's like, well, you ask where you are, and then you ask how to get where you're going. Like, can I say that in Spanish? Yes, I can.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny, learning a language, you wouldn't really, more than you'd think, there's a lot of kind of self-esteem barriers you run into. Being assertive is a big one. We learn in our own language how to be passive in the language we speak. Mm-hmm. Do you think that maybe I could possibly somehow get you to do this? Like that's, you're not being assertive. You don't feel like you have the right to ask for something. You're very timid in asking. And when you only know the words for like, I want this, you have to be, that's like a very assertive thing to say.
Yeah, for sure. Is there any chance that I could get a little bit of room in my coffee, and then could I possibly have some cream for that? It's like, me das café con leche.
Yeah.
Coffee con leche, cafe con leche.
Give me it. But yes, assertiveness, not being afraid to look dumb. I think that's the big one.
Yeah, and to be honest, that's one that I struggled with for a while. I would get Ryan to ask things because I was scared of screwing up how to say it.
Yeah, it's funny
like,
we'd get into
I screw up in English. Like I'm not perfect speaking English. So I'm not going to be perfect speaking Spanish either.
But we get into these mini conflicts because I wouldn't want to ask something, and then Amanda's usually a very assertive person. So that was kind of a bit of the foundation of a relationship where, I'm shy, timid, so I was afraid to be assertive. And so Amanda would kind of fill that gap for me. So when it's Spanish and you become a bit more timid, it like makes me uncomfortable. Like I don't want to ask and you don't want to ask. And then we kind of get upset about each other over the surface level.
Asking? I'm mad at you for not asking, when really it's like, I'm mad at myself for being such a baby.
Yeah. And that's what so many conflicts seem to be. It's just you're mad at yourself, and then your mind kind of tricks you into thinking you're mad at someone else when you're really mad at yourself.
Yeah, for sure.
So Spanish school in Cusco was a really good experience for both of us. Another great way to meet people. And then from Cusco, we took off to our Machu Picchu trek.
Yeah, so there's a lot of sort of misconceptions around Machu Picchu and, how much it costs, what you do, how far you have to book in advance. I was recently talking to somebody I work with, and she's like, my friend wants to go to Machu Picchu, but I just can't save up $8,000 to do that. And I was like, why are you saving $8,000 to go to Machu Picchu?
You need $6,000 for cocaine and then $2,000 for the trip.
Well, she's like, oh, well, you need $8,000 to go on the trek. And I was like, what trek are you looking at? Does this come with like a luxury alpaca? Like, what is this? Like, why are you paying $8,000 for this? She's like, oh, well, like when we looked it up, like that's what you have to pay. And I was like, oh, no, that's not what you have to pay. So there's quite a few different options. I mean, there is the traditional Inca Trail, and the rumors around that are true. Machu Picchu Inca Trail is...
The rumors are somewhat true.
Yeah, I mean, it's booked up through the winter, I'm certain right now.
Yeah, I think you're looking at next year. Oh, yeah, for sure. It's like October right now.
Yeah.
I sometimes forget that.
Yeah, so when we were there in June, it was booked until October. So people book months and months in advance for the traditional 4-day Inca Trail trek. And within that, there's so many permits. There's only certain companies that can take you to and from, and you do pay more for that. Is that your only option to see Machu Picchu? Definitely not. The first time that I went to Machu Picchu, I was going straight from Cusco and going to Machu Picchu my 3rd day in Peru, which is not really enough time to acclimatize. So my friend and I actually took a train from Cusco to Aguas Calientes, and then the day of Machu Picchu, we took a bus up. Plain and simple. I went online beforehand and I bought tickets to get into Machu Picchu and to hike Huayna Picchu, which is one of the options inside of it. And because of credit card fraud, you can no longer do that on the website, but you just find a hostel to book through. So I just emailed a hostel that we were going to stay at, and I was like, hey, can we do Machu Picchu on this day? You send them your passport information, they send you back a ticket.
Yeah, and just to list the options, there's the Inca Trail. The main defining feature of the Inca Trail is that you actually get to walk into Machu Picchu through the Sun Gate. The Sun Gate is just a different area than the normal entrance. So you kind of do walk this trail that leads up and right into Machu Picchu. Then there's the Salcantay Trek, which is a higher elevation, more intense hike, a bit longer.
I think it's 5 or 6 days.
But you do, so everything other than the Inca Trail, you show up at Aguas Calientes and then you walk up to Machu Picchu or take the bus up, and then you have to enter through the main entrance of everyone else.
It's like the modern day main entrance. So it's why the Sun Gate is so popular, is because that is what archaeologists think was their entrance back in the day, the Inca people's entrance. And now they've created another, like a road up and a pathway to go up.
Yeah, and when you do go in that way, you get there and there's a gigantic line and there's an expensive restaurant.
We're getting ahead of ourselves. What are the other options for?
Yeah, sorry. Salcantay, and then what we did, the Inca Jungle Trek. But like this, we talked about this on the Bolivia episode, bundling, how that's a really popular thing in tourism. It's never just okay to do the thing. You've got to have this, they try to bundle and add these features to it.
Well, it's not that it's not okay to do it. I mean, if you can make the choice, like I did the first time that I went there, to just do Machu Picchu. You can do that. But if you're going to do one of these treks, you get all these other things included in it. Like, it's kind of like they're trying to give you the best value for your money is what they're trying to do. But
they're trying to get more of your money.
Or yeah, maybe charge you more and then give you more stuff. We looked into the Inca Trail. It was booked up until the fall. So then we looked into Salcantay. We decided that 5-6 days of trekking was that's not really Ryan and Amanda. We like to hike. We're not really like 5-day trekkers.
And it was quite expensive. You're camping. So we were comparing it to this jungle trek. Jungle trek, you're staying at hostels. You're doing lots of cool things, mountain biking, zip lining, walking, but not doing it. I think you do like 15K one day or something, and a similar amount the next day. Salcantay, you're walking longer distances, you're kind of roughing it more. It's considerably more expensive. So you're just like, well, we seem to be getting more for this cheaper option. Doesn't that make more sense? It seems like it'll be funner.
More fun.
Whatever.
Who cares about grammar on the World Wanderers podcast?
But people seem to be like, some people seem to frown upon the Inca Jungle Trek.
I think there is people who are very interested in the Inca culture, and they think that you should pay for the Inca Trail and that you should plan ahead of time so that you do that and really get an appreciation for the culture. I think that there are people out there who do believe that. In saying that, I don't know. I mean, it's such trampled over tourism. Are you really getting an authentic experience anymore with that? I mean, I haven't done that, so I don't really know, but it seems like, there's a lot of Inca trails. There's a lot of trails that have been made by the Incas, and they've kind of taken this one that gets into Machu Picchu and made it into something super popular, and now they charge a fortune for you to do it. Yeah,
so our trek included a run on a Inca trail, not the Inca trail. Because there are quite a few entrances to Machu Picchu and quite a few Inca trails. I think we even did one in Sucre in Bolivia. But yeah, they've taken this, created kind of an artificially limited supply of trips because only a certain amount of people are let onto that trail, which just makes the price way more expensive.
Yeah, and then even on the day, like you do have tickets for a day. Like the first time I went around, my friend was actually really, really sick the day that we were going up, but you can't change your day. Like she has a ticket for that day. And it's like you either go to Machu Picchu or you waste your ticket. You can't even give it to somebody in a hostel and trade them for the next day. So they are very strict on how many people can be in there at a time. And I think that's just, it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site. I have heard rumors about them even closing it so that people can't go there at all.
Yeah, the problem with really popular destinations like that, and we kind of touched on it in Cambodia too, but I think they have similar problems in Peru. They use this, it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site, we need to preserve and protect this as the framework to the government takes control of it, and then some cronies get to make a whole bunch of money off of corruptions by charging an astronomical price because they've effectively created a mini kingdom where you can't go into. And they just like tax you for going in and then pocket all the money. The money doesn't go to local people. It goes to, cronies and bureaucrats in Lima. Yeah.
And I mean, we asked our tour guide on our tour his opinion with that. And, he was pretty upfront. Like as locals, we don't see the money. And it is a really sad thing because it is a beautiful piece of history. And, it kind of sucks. It goes back to what we talked about in our Cambodia episode. Is it okay to be there? It's the first time I went there, I was completely awestruck by it. It was one of the most breathtaking things I've ever seen. And I wanted Ryan to experience it, and I want all of my friends to see it. So it's tough in that regard. Is it right to go there? I don't know, but it's so amazing that I really do feel like it's one of those things that you need to see before you die.
Yeah, it is really spectacular. And one of the things I didn't realize was how big it was. You go up to Machu Picchu, and then there's like 2 other hikes you can do while you're up there, but then you're walking around. It takes forever. It's a gigantic area.
Yeah, for sure. So just before we get into that actual day of on Machu Picchu, let's go back to sort of our booking process. When we were in sort of southern Argentina, we were talking to people who already had it booked. So this is kind of mid to end April, and we're like, oh, we're going to be there mid-June. And they're like, oh, you should really book. And I was like, oh, I thought you could just do it in Cusco. And so they were like, oh, no, I'd probably look into it. That kind of got press panic button for me. And so I started contacting hostels, arranging it, that sort of thing. And we ended up booking with a company called Loki. And so Loki is a massive chain of hostels in sort of northern Bolivia and through Peru, super popular, known for the party vibe. So that made me a little bit nervous since we're not really big partiers anymore, but they had really good ratings. Their travel desk seemed to be super organized. So I'm like, which days do you have available in June? And they're like, any day, just like pick a day. And at this point, I'm like, okay, I don't need to be worrying about this. Like they run this tour every single day. Like we're fine. We ended up just figuring out our schedule anyways and booking it. You can do it through almost any big hostel in Peru, Cusco.
It's something that confused me a little bit too, because the Inca jungle trek I would have figured was like a thing one company offered, and then the other companies would differentiate themselves. But it must be like the people who regulate it develop the tours and then allow companies to operate those tours, because a whole bunch of different hostels run the Inca jungle trek. So I just found that a little bit weird.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's definitely not what I expected. It was pretty cool though. So we were in a group of, 10 or 12 people. And then our first day was biking. Our second day was trekking. Our third day was ziplining, followed by a trek, followed by hot springs. And then that night we stayed in Aguas Calientes. So our fourth day was Machu Picchu. So it was a pretty good 4 days, I think.
Yeah, I really, really enjoyed the trip, and I'm really glad we did that one. I think there was part of me that felt a little bit like maybe we shouldn't be doing this, like mountain bike zip line thing. It kind of feels like a little bit
unauthentic.
Yeah, absolutely unauthentic. And there's this like kind of culture that, not being authentic, but it's fun and it's a good price. And it was just a really good experience. So I definitely recommend that to people. And I'd also say to people, you don't have to do a trek to go to Machu Picchu.
No, you absolutely do not. I have no problem telling people, I'm said it on this podcast, I have no problem with people knowing that I took a train to Aguascalientes and a bus up the day of Machu Picchu. And to be quite frank, like to get up at 4:30 in the morning and to wait in a line to get into Machu Picchu and then to trek up stairs that are super steep with an elevation increase of at least 500 meters, if not more, takes about an hour to get up those stairs. By the time you get up, you're exhausted.
Yeah. So we run into that when you're researching online and talking to people about, you've really got to do a trek. Oh, you've really got to walk up. And kind of shaming you. Like it felt like there would be kind of this shame if you just, took a bus up and walked around and then left. It's like, oh, you're such a terrible backpacker. You should feel shame for not having an authentic experience. But when you walk up, you really do tire yourself up and then you can't enjoy it as much. There's this thing though, about, it's kind of a cognitive bias where we equate effort to value. So you put more effort into something and then you appreciate it more because you think it's worth more, because that's just how we're hardwired. But yeah, we did experience that where we got up super early, hiked up there, and then felt super tired in the afternoon and couldn't even go hike Machu Picchu mountain in Machu Picchu. Yeah,
I mean, that's a 2-3 hour hike itself. So if you've already spent an hour hiking upstairs, you're tired. You've gotten up at like 4 a.m. You're exhausted. And then to try and do 3 more hours of hiking after Machu Picchu is on a hill, it's high elevation. It's big, like Ryan said before. Like, it is not a small area. Like, it is, there's some theories that it is a university campus, and that's a good way to compare it. I mean, even if that's not what the Incas were using it for, it's the size of a university campus with lots of stairs and super hilly. And when you're trying to explore the whole thing, you're walking a ton.
Yeah. You do a cool tour around and there's lots of people up there. You take your photos from that one spot you've seen all those photos from, and then
we'll post a few of ours anyways. They're pretty awesome.
It's funny because there's also llamas around. I guess like the government has just slapped some llamas in there.
We asked our tour guide, we're like, how did these llamas get up here? Because for those of you who don't know, Machu Picchu is actually on the top of this mountain that's
kind of like in
the
saddle.
Middle of a valley. Yeah.
Looks like a saddle.
Yeah, it's really cool. So it's high up. Or like, how did these llamas get up here? And he's like, oh yeah, the government actually put them up here so that tourists can enjoy them. I was like, oh, that's great.
They do some good photo ops, some selfie opportunities.
Oh, they're so funny looking. I love them. But there's cool options once you're up there. You can get tickets for Huayna Picchu, which is actually the mountain that is in all of the Machu Picchu photos. You can actually hike to the top of that. And I did that the first time that I went to Machu Picchu. It's about an hour up. It's really cool. There's some ruins on the top. Definitely worth it. Second time around, we just went up to the Sun Gate, which got a photo at the Sun Gate. Pretty much did the Inca Trail.
Yeah, and going to the Sun Gate and seeing the view of Machu Picchu from there, because it's kind of, it's back a bit farther. So then you have this walk down in towards like the main area. Seeing that view made me think that it would be amazing to pull up, like you've been trekking and then you come over that way to see your first view of Machu Picchu, because when you come in the main entrance, you kind of, it's as if you just poked your head like right into the middle and you're there.
Yeah.
Whereas the Sun Gate, you kind of have this longer view. You're like, you can see the whole thing as your first view. It would be really cool. So I would like to do like the 1 day Inca trek, which isn't a thing. But I think if I was to go again, I'd consider doing the Inca Trail. But yeah, I would really love to walk into Machu Picchu that way.
Yeah.
But,
so you would go again? Like, you think it's definitely worth it?
Yeah, I would probably go back again. I do think, though, that people should really kind of question those, oh, you've got to do the trek ideas. Because, like, some of the Salkantay trek, you do this really hard trek around, and then you show up to Aguas Calientes, and then you go up just like if you were going for a single day. You know, you could do a trek somewhere else for cheaper and then go just do one day to Machu Picchu.
Yeah, for sure. And you have to keep in mind that when you do a trek like that, you're with the same group for all those days. You don't have control over what you're eating or where you're sleeping. So if that's not your thing, I mean, don't force it.
And when we were looking into the different treks, I was kind of assuming that they all were treks into Machu Picchu. It's not like really apparent that they're all, other than the Inca Trail, they all enter through the same way. So if you didn't know that, you have been informed.
Yeah. And I mean, in saying that, if 5 days of trekking is really how you get your jollies off, I've heard it's absolutely beautiful. I've heard that the scenery is actually more beautiful than the Inca Trail. So perhaps that's a good option for you. And if you're more into ziplining, mountain biking, Inca Jungle Trek was definitely a really, really fun time.
Yeah, our experience on the Jungle Trek through Loki was really good. I would definitely recommend anyone to go through there. And I do think that there's a lot of pressure to book in advance, which I feel like some of it is a bit false, because when we were there, you could have booked for cheaper just in Cusco.
If you've got some time, your schedule's a little bit flexible, there's lots of last minute deals at some of the bigger hostels in Cusco. If you're not a stress bucket like I tend to be, you're not.
But because I think a lot of the tour agencies, to put pressure on you to buy, will say, oh, you've got to book in advance. You've got to. And that's not entirely true.
Unless you want to be on the traditional Inca Trail.
Except for that one.
Then you've got to book like 8 months in advance. Let's just book it for next year. Let's just go.
Yeah, there's some other things I'd like to do in Peru that we might delve into on a different podcast, but Machu Picchu would definitely be a cool thing to go check out again. And there's quite a few different ruins in the Cusco, Machu Picchu Sacred Valley area from the Inca times or maybe some other time. It's cool to go. It brings up a lot of like interesting thoughts, right? When you see all these gigantic stones perfectly fitted together in this super unlikely place. It's like, and there's like this kind of, at one time, people seem really sure about what they're talking about, and then other people are like, oh yeah, they really have no idea what they're talking about. Like, no one really knows what's going on here, what this was used for. And then when you think about it like that, it's like, there's this idea that we're on this very linear evolution. Like, there were cavemen, and then we developed language, and then agriculture, and then that industrial revolution.
Very interesting. You made that really interesting.
Well, that's the tone it's laid out. And it's also simple. Everyone embraced innovation, and it's just been a lovely little cakewalk in a very direct order up until 2014. When the reality is human development is more defined by chaos, like super rapid development, massive drops out of development, and we really don't know what happened. There's some theories that Machu Picchu and Tiwanaku in Bolivia are way, way older than people give them credit for. There's the Nazca Lines in Peru, which is another crazy mystery.
We'll talk about that in another episode for sure. It's absurd. Yeah,
but digging into the Inca culture is something, or whoever built that stuff, it's cool.
Yeah, and I guess for anybody who is going to Machu Picchu or has been, I challenge you to think outside the box. Think about what you saw. Does it make sense with what you're being told? Because when I think about that, it brings up a lot of questions.
Yeah, and it's people go and they snap a photo, and I'm saying people, but I mean me too. I was a little bit detached from, imagine yourself as a child who went there and all the questions you'd have. And we've been trained through school and university and stuff to just kind of accept what we're told by people in positions of authority. But if you really let your curiosity out, it's crazy. It's mind boggling. You'd have so many questions, and there really aren't good answers for those questions.
Yeah, it's true. So if you have any questions or theories on Machu Picchu, the different options in trekking, shoot us an email at theworldwanderspodcast@gmail.com. We'll post some links to Loki, where we booked our tour, where we stayed, and all of that on our show notes at theworldwanders.com. Anything else to add, Ray?
Nope.
Okay, thanks for listening.
Until next time.
Bye.